sorry, you proposed both?
I'm up for both.
So, all right, so yeah, I'm going to do a quick CI example now, and we'll potentially do a longer, or not a longer, but just a separate session in January focusing on CI as well as sort of targeting vulnerability classes in general. Okay, so yeah, let's walk through this. So again, basically what we're going to do is we're going to onboard a repo to do continuous scanning with Semgrep. We're going to write a custom rule that's specific to the code base we're examining, and then we're going to show how that we can auto-suggest a fix. So big picture, that's what we're going to do in the next 5 to 7 minutes. So here is a repo. This is just forked from a vulnerable Flask app that Weave45 created. And let's see how we can add this to Semgrep. So if we go to semgrep.dev/manage, this is sort of Semgrep community, which is our SaaS app. So this is free to use. There is like an enterprise and sort of teams version with some additional features, but this is free for you to use on open source or even your company's code up to a certain point. I think there's some, like, if you want private rules or very advanced like config management, there's like some other stuff. But basically, if you want to do this right now, you can do this for free without talking to me. Okay, so basically, we're going to set up a new project. So we're going to create a token, which we are going to give Semgrep, and that's how Semgrep is gonna reach out to our server and say, oh, what rules do you want me to run? And then it's gonna fetch the rules so that you can sort of centrally manage what you're running rather than having to do a pull request to all the repos if you want to change what's running where later. Okay, so let's see, how is that gonna look? So basically on this repo, you could do this org level, or in this example, it's just one repo, so we can do that. We're going to say, okay, go to the secrets for this repo, create a new one. We're going to copy in this secret name and value, then add secret. And this is just using the sort of built-in stuff that GitHub provides. It's not anything sort of fancy. Okay. So basically, this is just saying, hey, Semgrep is going to report some meta information about what's scanned to this SaaS app. It's just going to report the findings. It's not leaking source code or anything like that. We don't want to steal anyone's source code because that's just liability for us. You know, we want as little data of yours as possible. Okay, so now we are going to set up a GitHub action so that whenever there's a new pull request, Semgrep will run. So how do we do that? Well, there's a specific GitHub workflows folder. And so we are going to, probably realistically, you would do this like command line, but it's just nice to do it in the UI for demo purposes. Okay, so we're going to create a semgrep.yaml file. Just copy in the text here. So this is just using the GitHub action syntax. So we're saying, run this Semgrep job. This is the Docker image to use, pass in that secret that we set up a second ago. Let's see. So because this is a demo, let's YOLO swag commit to master. Okay, cool. We've got Semgrep, the GitHub action set up. So, okay. So the next step is just creating like an example new file and new pull request just to make sure that Semgrep is working. So let's just create a new file. And this is just an example, like it can be whatever you want. This is just sort of like the simplest minimal thing that you could do. So we're going to create a new Python file and say 5 is equal to 5. There's a Semgrep rule that just says, oh, if you see something like this, it's probably wrong. So again, this is just an example. Anything Semgrep will flag would work fine for this. We're just trying to prove to ourselves that Semgrep is actually running. So we'll create a new branch and create a pull request. And because we set up the GitHub action a second ago, it's going to say, oh, hey, new pull request. Let's run Semgrep. And then if you remember the message field in the metadata tag for the rule that we were looking at a minute ago, the text of that is actually going to be commented in the pull request here, like on the codes. Hey, this line, this is what we found. So yeah, if we wait another second. And if you actually look at the details, what you'll find is the time it takes for the GitHub action to like pull the image and then run it is actually sort of the majority of the time spent here. But looks like we just finished. So the scan failed because we found this issue and we commented, hey, this is always true. We're using a meta variable to say, oh, we can actually include the exact value and so forth. So, okay, cool. This is an example of going from Semgrep not in CI to scanning every pull request in like 3 or 4 minutes. But I think we can do a more interesting example. So we can finish. If we go back here, we can see, hey, we just scanned this a few seconds ago. We have one finding. So one thing that's interesting is Semgrep SaaS supports a bunch of policies. And what a policy is basically one or more rule sets that we want to scan our repos. So rather than having to manage those in every repo, you can manage, say, hundreds or thousands of repos, what gets scanned where, in one place. So you could say, oh, I want all my Flask apps to get this policy. I want all of my Android apps to get this policy. And you can actually change these behind the scenes sort of whenever you want without talking to the dev teams, because you're essentially managing it here. So for each rule set, you can say, do you want to notify me? Do you want to block CI? Yes or no? Because sometimes you might want to say, oh, I want to see when anyone adds a route, but I don't want it to block CI because that's not necessarily a security issue. We have like a findings dashboard. So this is like still pretty new, to be honest. We're still figuring out what exactly we wanted to do, but we're showing things like, hey, how many things are we finding? Are developers fixing it or not? Which policies are performing well? Like what is finding issues? Like just sort of like stuff like that. For notifications, you can do like Slack hooks, web hooks, and so forth. So, but the thing I wanted to show you is, let's see. So in this application, because of how it works, basically in every route, there is a check for the authorization header. It tries to pull a JWT token out of that. And if that JWT token is not present, it just returns error. So this is a very interesting application-specific business logic thing that we would like to enforce. So no static analysis tool out of the box is going to understand how your code base works because they've never seen it before, right? But I just wanted to show like this is a way that you could like codify something that's unique to you and then roll it out in CI. So one thing, we're actually going to sort of abuse GitHub's suggestion feature. So in the message, we're going to use the suggestion syntax to say, hey, if you find this route that does not do an authorization check, flag it, and then comment on that pull request this snippet, which is basically going to use the meta variables that we match in the pattern to suggest an auto fix. And one thing that's pretty cool here is, see this add to policy button? Basically, like if you were to say, my custom business logic, and you were to save this, so you could prototype a pattern and then click add to policy here, and then directly add it to one of the policies you're using to scan repos. So if we click that, and then if we were to go back to here, we can see that custom rule that we just wrote in semgrep.live is like already running in whatever policy you want it to. So this is a great way for like, oh, you have a bug bounty submission, or oh, you just found a bug. You can like prototype a rule for it and then roll it out into CI in like, you know, as long as it takes you to write the rule, because once it's written, you can just deploy it with like one click, basically. So I'm going to delete this because it's actually already added. But just to show you what this looks like, we've got lots of tabs. That one. Okay, so let's just take the test code we have here. So these are like the example vulnerable code snippets that we want to find. And let's just go back to this repo and let's add this purposely vulnerable code to this routes file, just to see like, does our rule behave as we would expect? So just copy this routes that do not require authorization in there. No auth. We will create a pull request. And then, yeah, let's just let it run. So I think what is interesting here, and I want to show you, I'm not going to like talk through it, but on our blog. So this is actually, I think, a pretty interesting use case for self-service security. So one of our engineers, Nathan, basically the story behind this is he was like, we had some logging in our code that was like accidentally logging some sensitive information, and he found this issue and then was like, oh, we shouldn't do this. He then went to like semgrep.live, wrote a custom rule to say, okay, this is what it looks like for us to log sensitive information. So he found the bug, wrote a rule, and then he added it to our CI checks so that anyone writing code and pushing it to our SaaS app is not going to do that same mistake again. And he actually did that without talking to the AppSec team, and just found the issue, wrote a rule, deployed it all himself in a couple of hours. So I think that that's pretty cool. Okay, so our pull request has finished. So we have matched, this route was not doing an authorization check. This is the text from the message in the rule. And the developer could say like, oh, I want to merge in this change. So again, we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for developers to do the right thing without sort of giving them something security related they need to fix and then not giving them much guidance on how to do so. So again, autofix is early stages. There's a lot of stuff we want to build, but I think it's an exciting direction. So yeah, I think that's adding to CI. So we went from not in CI to adding an initial policy, and then we wrote a custom rule and then deployed that to run on every PR in about 10 or 15 minutes. So yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff I could talk about, but I would rather just answer questions. So yeah, let me know what you think.
Very cool. One thing I wonder about is, does it support the multi-line change suggestions? If you wanted to note something, you want to replace more than just line 5259 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are, yeah, so there is actually a fix metadata key that you can use in Semgrep rules. This is actually sort of abusing the message key to do that. So like that is to say there is like basic support for this, but there is like a ton that is could be made better. In terms of like fixing multi-lines, yeah, that's definitely something that we can and will do soon. There is actually ways in Semgrep, and this is very new as of like last week or so, that you can use a meta variable to match like multiple lines or multiple statements, such then you could then replace like a whole section or like bits and pieces if you're doing like an autofix type thing. So my answer is yes, but it's early stages. for that. But if you have a specific use case, we would love to hear it, because then we can build something that does that.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, good question.
Please join our Slack, guys. There you can ask questions to Clint, as well as the community as well. I have pasted the link into the chat.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely join their Slack. If you have like Semgrep specific questions, we also have a community Slack as well, and you can see like people are always asking questions and getting help from us as well as from people in the community about how, yeah, there's linked there.
I definitely wanted to thank you for the talk today and give you some feedback that I think you really hit the sweet spot here.
Thank you.
I've used a lot of various types of things like this, you know, from lint to find sec bugs to, you know, fortify and check marks and all these other things. And I think that this is something where I can actually not only teach AppSec engineers how to use, but I think we could actually teach developers how to do this, which I think is amazing, right? I mean, it's like, because, you know, teaching even AppSec engineers like how to write a correct regular expression, you know, gets to be a little complicated sometimes, especially if you're talking about all those nuances of like not including, you know, the bazillion false positives. So I think this is really excellent. I think you've nailed it. Really glad to see this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, our goal is, we don't want this to be a security tool. We want it to be a tool for everyone who wants to search and find code. And yeah, we have actually given presentations to like AppSec teams, and then they've said, hey, can you actually, you know, present to like my engineering productivity team, the people responsible for ensuring code quality across like, you know, our massive org. So yeah.
Right. I mean, I started looking at like CodeQL, and I thought that was a little bit too complex for most people. So I think this really hits the spot.
I think CodeQL is, I think, great and very powerful, but I think at least in my opinion, the barrier to entry is too high.
Yeah,
for many.
that's what I'm talking about. Exactly.
Yeah,
and part of the problem with that is like, you know, people whose job is to do like to write rules and stuff, you know, it would be not a barrier to them because that's their job. But I think that, like I said, you know, when we want to, if we're like, I'm like an OWASP, right? I'm like, my job is an AppSec person, and I think the only way to move the bar with that is basically to be able to put this type of stuff in the hands of the developers. We can't rely on AppSec experts, right? We have to shift left. And so I think you've done exactly that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's many smart people working on it. I'm just one person. But yeah, I'm excited by the direction, and I'm glad you think so too. So thank you.
One use case I've heard from developers is people that are maintaining shared libraries internally are interested in finding out who's using their library and maybe even which version. I imagine that it would be relatively simple to write, you know, rules that could check everybody's code and be able to gather that information in one place so somebody could see.
Yeah, that's a very interesting use case. We're not really talking about this publicly too much yet, but you know, we're all friends and family here. We are working on some sort of initial prototypes for like, can Semgrep be used to like just understand the purpose of code, or like just what is in it? Like, is this like a web app? Is this a front end? What libraries does it use? What does it use them for? More like a code understandability thing than just specifically security. There are security applications, but yeah, that could be used for like, you know, a VP of engineering to understand, you know, what tech stack they're responsible for, and things like that. So early stages, you'll probably see something about that from us next year, I would guess. But if you want early access, let me know.